This has been a really rough season for the Golden State Warriors for a lot of different reasons. The Draymond stuff, trying to figure out what to do with the roster in terms of whether they should keep guys like Klay Thompson. This has been probably the most difficult season that they've had of this entire run when they've actually had their guys healthy. But now we're getting more information that makes this even more of a difficult situation. And of course, the guy that I'm talking about is someone I didn't really expect to be talking a ton about at the beginning of the year, unless it was like possible trade discussions. And that's Jonathan Kuminga. So Golden State, not too long ago, they blow this game to Denver where they're at home and they're up, double digits with 5 minutes to go. They blow the game. And Jonathan Kuminga had an awesome game and played under 20 minutes and was not put back in the game in the fourth quarter. And literally the next morning, we get a report about how he's not happy about that. And he's lost faith in Steve Kerr as his head coach to try and help him, reach his potential. And Kuminga's been a really interesting player so far in the NBA because when Golden State took him, they took him ahead of someone like Franz Wagner that a lot of people expected Golden State to take. And it was definitely like an upside kind of swing for them. And he's been, very up and down to begin his career. But this year, especially since Draymond got suspended, Kuminga's been really good. He's arguably been one of their best players, yet it still feels like the Warriors as an organization, and more importantly, Kerr as head coach, don't fully trust him and they're holding him back. And it's a weird, mindset to have because it's not like the Warriors are 10 games over 500. It's not like they're some kind of championship contending team that can't afford mistakes from, a younger player like Kuminga, who still certainly is going to make mistakes. And it's also even weirder because he provides them in athleticism and a boost on the wing that they just don't have anywhere else on the roster. And so you would think that they would be prioritizing him. And obviously he thinks that should be the case, which has now led us to the point where this situation has to be resolved one way or the other. And it's kind of hard to figure out ways in which it can be resolved without Golden State trading away Jonathan Kuminga, right? Because let's say that, Draymond comes back in a handful of games. What does that mean for Kuminga? Because, unless you're going to be playing Draymond at the 5 a ton, Jackson Davis has been good, Looney has been good, or decent at least. It becomes really difficult to find minutes for Kuminga in the spot that he's been really good, which is kind of replacing the Draymond Green, not necessarily role, but playing at the 4. And so playing a traditional center alongside Draymond, alongside Kuminga is probably not going to work, right? So it does appear to be a situation where Draymond, has done plenty of things wrong this season, has been suspended from the team, and then his impending return is going to potentially make this Kuminga situation that much more difficult. A guy that has done a lot of good things this year, hasn't been suspended from the team, and yes, is currently frustrated, and ideally that stuff wouldn't come out through a Shams tweet, but still, it's a bit of a weird thing, right? Because Draymond is foundational to this team, but it feels like one of these guys has to go, because if not, the other guy is going to be limited to 20, 25 minutes to whatever Kuminga played against Denver, just because of how many guys they have in the front court that need to play and kind of the overlapping skill sets of all those different players. And it's a really interesting kind of microcosm of the Warriors season because they continue to hold on to this past era, Klay and Draymond and guys like that. Despite Klay not playing very well and Draymond getting suspended from the team, they continue to prioritize those guys over some of the younger players on the roster like Kuminga. And at a certain point, I don't really blame Kuminga for being frustrated by a lack of a role that he definitely feels like he has earned, especially when the guy that he has basically replaced is suspended from the team and did things wrong to get suspended from the team. It's not like, Draymond just isn't playing well and you want to just stick it out and make sure that, see if he can kind of come out of it because it's going to help you long term. He's away from the team and Kuminga is still here doing all the right things and you're still not prioritizing him enough. Now, even with this recent stretch of play for Kuminga, I'm not entirely confident that he is going to be, some kind of future all-star kind of player. Still plenty of holes in his game. But for this Warriors team specifically, it feels like a player that they can't afford to lose unless they're trading him for, a Pascal Siakam, something like that, right? Some kind of star. Maybe there's a Donovan Mitchell move somewhere in there where they maybe move, Chris Paul and Kuminga to Cleveland. There's some possibilities there, right? Unless it's a move like that, I don't think that Golden State can afford to trade him away. He's so valuable to them in terms of adding youth to the roster and potentially a future trade asset as well. But again, I don't really know how you resolve that unless you trade Draymond as well. And that's something that I've continued to keep an eye on the entire season, ever since Draymond got suspended. And it was clear that kind of the vibes of the team were a little bit better when Draymond left, and then some guys like Kuminga started to play really well without him there. I started to think about what would have to happen for Golden State to decide to trade away Draymond, maybe even Klay as well, and really reshape the roster. We've gotten comments from their, from their front office not too long ago about how they're kind of going to evaluate the next couple of weeks and then make some decisions at the deadline. And to me, that sounded like they were going to evaluate potentially trading Draymond or Klay Thompson. Now, this is the Warriors, and they have been potentially rightfully so, depending on your opinion, really strong in their belief of sticking with their core guys, their veteran guys. These are championship-proven players. Draymond, Klay, and Steph have established the foundation of the most successful organization in the NBA over the last decade. And I'm not trying to pretend like it's easy to just say that you need to get rid of one of those guys, but it does feel like, and we've talked about this in other videos, it feels like they're holding on to a group that doesn't need to be held on to, that doesn't need to be prioritized this much. And to me, if I was a Warriors fan, that would be really, really concerning, because you want the goal of the team to be to improve long-term, to always be focused on what's best for the Warriors, not what's best for the egos of Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, but what's best for the Golden State Warriors. And right now it feels like the best thing for the Warriors is to really, really explore what Draymond's trade value would be and start prioritizing guys like Kuminga. And I don't just mean in terms of, trying to develop those guys and what they could possibly be for the future. Like, Kuminga has arguably been better than Draymond in that 4 spot this season, not just in the future, not even accounting for potential, not any of that stuff. But because it's the Warriors, more than likely what's going to happen here is they're going to maybe use Chris Paul and some stuff to try and get, another good starter on the team, maybe move Wiggins, probably trade Kuminga for some stuff, and maybe try and get Siakam or Donovan Mitchell. There's certainly options for them out there. And given the track record of this front office, they're always going to prioritize those veteran guys. Even when Klay's not playing particularly well, he's been a little better lately, but at the beginning of the year, not so much. Even when Draymond gets suspended from the team, they're always going to prioritize those guys. They're not necessarily wrong for that, but in terms of the future outlook of the team, I personally, it's easy for me to say this because I don't have any emotional investment in those 3 guys. It seems pretty clear to me what the right decision for the future of the franchise is. Yet I don't know that Golden State's actually going to make that choice. And look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this Kuminga thing is the wake-up call that the team needs to realize, how good he's been. Honestly, I think the bigger point of the conversation that I've just completely glossed over is what this means for Steve Kerr as head coach as well. There's been a lot of negative stuff about him from the Warriors fan base, and then it's starting to kind of get into the wider NBA audience as well of, is he a good coach? Is he a good coach for this team when you do have younger guys and they're constantly changing the lineups all the time? That's been a frustration for them, and honestly, a lot of teams around the league. A lot of coaches feel like they are kind of moving some pieces around during the middle of the year way more than they ever have before, and that is kind of, we always talk about the foundational pieces of the roster, Draymond, Klay, and Steph, but Steve Kerr is also a foundational part of the organization. Bob Myers is now gone in the front office, and it makes me wonder if this is the make or break moment for Golden State. And do they start evaluating Steve Kerr as head coach just for a shakeup within the organization? Do they start evaluating the future Draymond and Klay on the roster? This, although, Kuminga isn't necessarily like a giant power within the Warriors organization, what he represents in terms of the potential future and present of the team and of the roster could be that final push that they needed to really make the kind of changes that it has been pretty clear since the Draymond suspension needed to be made.